Hey, what's up everyone? In today's video we're gonna be looking at my week 2 game of the TTS Season 10 League. So the matchup was in between me and Specter. I was playing Inhumans, as you can see over here, and he was playing Web Warriors. So he won Prio, and he chose to go with his extracts. Why I chose this is mainly because my other two secures, which are not Gamma Wave, are Extremis and Infinity Formula. Both are great for Web Warriors, and he had a bunch of extracts that were way more annoying for him. So it makes sense. He got unlucky for him. We ended up on Gamma, which Web Warriors don't like that much, as they're much better on those spread out maps, right? So because of that, I got to choose a point cost and get on my best secure against them. For the threat cost, I chose 15 instead of 16, which is Paranoia's threat cost. Why? For two reasons. I really like my 15 options on Gamma with Inhumans, and I also really like the fact that this way I'm also choosing the opposite point cost than my opponent's scenario. Normally, everybody plans something for the threat cost on their own scenarios. Like if Paranoia is 16, you want to have a good 16 threat plan on it. Gamma Wave is 15, so you want to have a 15 threat plan on it, etc. Right? So here we can see the team I am going to use for this game. Right, so I went with Black Bolt, Beast, Crystal, and Sabretooth. The reasoning behind this team is, in my mind, fairly simple, but we're still going to go through a few options that could have been interesting. Like the other models that I have that stand out for this kind of scenario is pretty much everyone except Rhino, potentially. With some of them being stronger than others. Like Sam is not bad in general, but in Inhumans you have a lot of like long range models like Crystal, Black Bolt, Miss Marvel, which means that he's a bit less good. Medusa is also amazing on this scenario, and she could have been my go-to 4-threat for it. The reason I went with Sabretooth is I wanted the model that could be a bigger bully, and I also wanted to bring a fair amount of displacement. There's two things you have to look at when you're playing Gamma Wave, is who's going to be sitting on your back point and who's going to be fighting for the center. In this case, I have a nice even split where Crystal and Black Bolt are more likely to be like near my back point, with Beast and Sabretooth looking to fight more in the center. This means that I've got a nice layered approach on how to deploy and what I can do during the game. Considering my opponent was playing Web Warriors, I expect that I'm going to be the player playing more attrition and trying to win by removing my opponent's model and him to try to win through scenario as fast as he can. So with all of this in mind, let's go ahead and see what happened with the tactic cards and everything. I'm going to be going for like some fairly standard stuff here, right, with exceptional healing for Sabretooth. Sacrifice is a generally good defensive cards, Brace because I'm expecting a few throws, and Eyes of the Prize for the safe extract play. For my opponent, he went with Spider Tracker, Heroes for Ire, Brace, Patch Up, and All Webbed Up, which all makes sense, right? It's all stuff you'd expect to see out of a Web Warrior list, especially if you're bringing a model like Luke Cage. As we can see, I also brought a few models that are going to be beefier, like Luke Cage. Lizard, Miles is also fairly sturdy, while having a more controlly but backline model in Gwen, and then Black Cat for the steel stuff. Like, somewhat, it makes a lot of sense. The main thing here that I notice is my opponent has no safe extract play. This means that I'll be able to exploit this, have a much better round 1 positioning. So we're gonna start deploying here. So in my mind, wherever Lizard ends up going is where my opponent's going to go for with his not safe, but you know, center line pickup play. So early on, so I choose to go with Beast on the opposite side, as he's going to be likely my safe extract play at this point. Then you can see everything else is going to be, in my case, mostly deployed centrally, and I expect mostly the same for my opponent, as it is Gamma, so there's no reason to go super far. Right, so then we're gonna see Black Cat coming down the center. Alright, so one thing to note here that's really relevant for my opponent's tactic cards is Patch Up. Normally you'll see Web Warriors with Advanced R&D, so that means he's gonna be sacrificing some round 1 and 2 pressure from the R&D for some healing instead, which can help out for the attrition matchup a little bit more. Is that a choice I would personally make? I'm a big fan of R&D in Web Warriors, so I can't say, but like patch up with a lot of tanky models can make sense. With that deployment from our opponent, the one thing that's really interesting is now there's 2 models added over here, right? Like potentially. So what I can guess from this is maybe we will see a setup where both models are going to be sitting on closer over there, maybe to score the extra victory point. Like I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with Paranoia yet, so I cannot vouch for everything that's viable or not as a strategy, but that's not one I had previously encountered. So here we're gonna see a first activation lizard, which is pretty much what I was expecting. I did not expect this positioning choice though. I was expecting a lizard to pick up the objective and then to have Miles maybe cover him for the extra victory point if needed, but instead it seems like it's going to be a hard commit onto picking up with Miles to not take damage and then score the extra points. So we're gonna be doing our eyes on the prize play with Beast, right? One of the big thing that's great with Beast in this matchup is that he's extremely sturdy against physical attacks, and as you can see, my opponent has almost only physical attacks. And with the size 2 throw, I can throw anyone except Lizard, and on my Spender I can even push Lizard. And so here we see Miles go straight away, the objective, picking it up, not taking damage because he's near Lizard. But one thing that's particular about this is that now there's 2 models that are outside of the gamma wave and are going to be kind of far for next round. So here we're going to start setting up Sabertooth for Glory, giving him power. Here we're going to be setting up Black Bolt with like some cover behind the car, still able to thread the center line. I did not pre-measure it right, but I'm fairly certain I reached the midline and will be able to do work on the center if I need it. So here we see Gwen set up on the back point, makes sense, and that's why I kept Crystal for longer in the round. What's great about Crystal is she can now get within 4 of Gwen, right? I'm just looking at options. On the car would be better, but seems a little tight to do it on the car, so we're gonna go off of the car and just like get within 4. We're gonna go with a Hurricane Blast here, like because if we get a Wildland Pusher, it can be pretty annoying for next round, as now everything that my opponent's planning positioning wise is going to be awkward. We do not, but it's a gainer, so even though we don't deal damage, we're ready to give out some more to Sabertooth. Alright, so here, same thing. I would have personally expected Luke Cage to be picking up a Paranoia, as he's fairly tanky. Our opponent seems to be prioritizing keeping every point of health they can on their models. So we're gonna probably see another setup for Black Cat instead to come and pick up this one, right? Which is not what you'd expect normally. But this is first in threat, everything is a bit weird. And the good news for me from this is it means that Black Cat is not gonna be stealing anything anytime soon. And so here I'm gonna go with Sabertooth. I've got some options. I can Spender into Luke, right? Using my 2 power. Hit him, 6 dice Wild Pierce. Hopefully get some damage through, place within 1, which lets me finish somewhere around here, right? And then once this is done, I can like take the power from Crystal, pick up the objective, be within 2 so I don't take damage. This sounds kind of cool, but at the same time, dealing damage into Luke Cage is not really something I want to do. So you'll see here I'll be pondering what I can do right in between this. I've placed myself in a way that I cannot use Primal Bounce, right? And my other options are just simply moving, grabbing the extract, and being more patient. Or, right, like this. Or another thing I could be doing, simply moving and then throwing Luke off of the objective. Out of all of this, I think the worst decision is doing the Spender, and that's obviously what I'm gonna end up doing. And the reason why this is terrible is a bit layered, but it's mostly that it sends me back to having 0 power for the next round. I deal damage, but it's not relevant in the sense that Luke Cage is really not someone that I really want to damage or anything. I don't really want to feed him power. So like, there's a lot of layers of why it's not great. If I just save my power, I can then have a much better round activation next round. If I want to play the scenario, if I don't want to play the scenario, well, there's multiple ways, right, for the victory points, or if I don't, I can also just wait for next round, like just throw him away. It's like way better. Sometimes you make a decision and then dices end up rolling really poorly, and then you really wonder why you're doing something. This is a terrible decision from me. I mean, it's not going to be game losing necessarily, but I'm putting myself in a way worse position than I could have been had I been less greedy. So keep in mind, it's not because you can do something that you should necessarily do it. Sometimes saving your power for something more useful is better. So here we see the Black Cat play, which I'm pretty happy with, right? Even though I've made a terrible blunder with Sabretooth, I still like overall where I'm at because Black Cat is exposed, right? She's really close to everyone, like especially those two. She has an objective, so she's not threatening a steal anytime soon. Those two models for my opponent are fairly awkward because next round they both are going to need to do at least one move action to do anything, so that forces a lot of action and efficiency, right? These pieces are overall not super active, and some of them are in like more awkward spots than I'd like in this case Black Cat. Like, I like where Luke is, I really like where Gwen is, but like the others don't feel great for me. Beast would ideally be more forward, but he's right now holding an extract, and he can always move in next round and cause some chaos with his throw and some help from the leadership. So yes, here as we prepare, we can see, right, the other great thing for me is now Crystal has this insane beam, which is going to hopefully do a lot of work or set me up for some fun things later in the round. Right, so let's see how crazy this gets with the double beam. It's also going to be some incinerates. Gwen can potentially lifesaver someone, but even if that happens, it means that then Gwen has spent her power. So here you see a good start. Incinerate, deal a bunch of damage into Luke. Oh, a bunch, one. But then again, it's Luke. You never expect to deal more than one. One is already great. Into Black Cat. So I've got two. No rerolls because she's bad luck. He blocks one, so he takes one, but incinerate on both. I'm feeling great about the second beam. So, yeah, this is what I'm looking at right now. Right, just like in Gamma Wave in general, like you mostly want to take your more opportunistic attacks if you want. Just like your crystals just getting insane value, so keeping most of my piece safe. The only one that's exposed is Sabretooth, but I mean, it's Sabretooth. No one wants to shoot Sabretooth. So here we get a lifesaver, so I place the beam properly to get so that he can get the angle. Here, sadly, he went a bit fast and he's overlapping Luke's space. So sadly, that something, you know, always per measure. Always be careful, because otherwise this can happen and then it's terrible. Right now I'm got 2 power off of Gwen, a bunch of damage into Black Cat potentially. So yeah, always be careful with those decisions. Always take that little extra moment. I know life's always, you know, we're always in a hurry, but when you're playing and having fun, take that moment to savor the game and to pre-measure. Black Cat's gonna heroes for hire because I'm gonna elemental onslaught the energy range 4 attack, so hydrokinesis into her. So heroes for hire comes in, so it's Luke Cage instead taking the shot, which I'm super fine with because I've burned through 2 of my opponent's defensive techs for the round already. I even get to sneak in another damage on Luke. So that one activation from Crystal has done 7 damage, put out 2 incinerates, and it's looking real good for my attrition game plan. Because Heroes Fire is gone, right? Heroes Fire is gonna be gone. Gwen has no power. This is insane. The Troll, I'm super like, I could brace it, but there's no reason. I kind of want the extra power right now. If Beast can get some, it's gonna make his life a bit easier. Ideally, I would block more than 1. With Beast, like 2 would have been the perfect number. Alright, but we're gonna take 2 damage, rolling a skull, generating 1 billion power, using the leadership. Always use the leadership, transferring a power to Sabretooth. So now, there's some tough decisions for my opponent, because if we look at this for a moment, right, like I'm just gonna be looking at his stuff for a sec, right, because he plans on using Luke Cage. So if we look at his options, right, this is a no power Gwen, so the only thing she's threatening is Sabretooth. The only thing Lizard can do is move, and it's Sabretooth. The only thing Miles can do is move, and it's Sabretooth. It's like, none of those options are really good because Sabretooth has not activated yet. And a Sabretooth that isn't dazed but has just taken a bunch of damage is extremely deadly. My opponent doesn't really want to strike Sabretooth all that much, which is understandable. Thankfully, Luke's Spender is range 3. So he goes with Luke, trying to take out Crystal, and or Daze Beast with the Troll, right? As we're playing, this is part of what he wants to do, if possible. I will not be dazing from the attack, thankfully, as I block 2 to his 4 successes. But this time, I end up using Brace. Right, so why did I use Brace? Even though there's only a small chance that Beast gets dazed, if it happens, it can be pretty disastrous. I really feel like I'll need Beast to come in and do some cleanup on the midline later in the round. Alright, so here one thing that's interesting is now there is an attack coming into Sabretooth, right? But Sabretooth's got good defense overall, and he doesn't take damage. I kind of was hoping he did, but also hoping my opponent would not land the double wild trigger on Powerman Punch, as that stagger could have been pretty brutal for Sabretooth. Alright, as for what to do next in my case, alright, I'm just waiting for him to finish his activation. He ends up using Patch Up with Luke on Black Cat. This got me a bit off guard. Now Black Cat is back to being ill here, but she's burning, and within 2 of Sabretooth, so it makes sense to still go after her. It just means that it's gonna be a bit less likely that I daze her, but at the same time I don't need to throw Luke Cage away to prevent him from taunting. So was that a good trade? I don't know. Feel free to leave a comment about this. If you look it up, personally I think I would have forced the throw. As anyways, now with the 2 damage on the first shot, we get the Stop Squealing and Die power, which means that Sabretooth is likely dazing Black Cat. Right, so we deal 2 damage, gain back 2 power, take 1 with the leadership from Crystal again. Now we still get to throw Luke Cage away. As to which direction, honestly, this is a good question. Why would I end up sending him more? One way or the other, right? My thinking was, if I send him this way, right, the way that I sent him over here, it's away from everyone else on his team, right, all those guys. So for paranoia scoring purposes, this might be relevant. The other thing I'm thinking, which is a bit less obvious, but if Miles moves around here and hits Sabretooth and gets his wild trigger, he's going to be throwing me off somewhere in this direction. If this happens, then Sabretooth will be in range to miss up Luke Cage next round if I need to. It does also mean that Luke Cage is going to be in range to miss up Sabretooth if needed. So it can go both ways. That's always something to keep in mind. But as I have priority and I expect to still have it next round, that's perfectly fine by me. Alright, so here, if we look at this situation, mid-round 2, I'm feeling pretty good. Luke is going to be at 1 health from the Gamma Shelter damage. Black Cat is dazed. Those models are gonna have awkward rounds. Gwen still doesn't have anything great to do right now, as she could impact webbing Sabretooth, but that's not great, right? Cannot push him. Unlikely to deal a lot of damage, but you never know. It's MCP. Dice is gonna go crazy, but likely that nothing insane is gonna happen out of this. As for me, I don't have insane activations right now, but once my opponent moves stuff in, I probably do. Now, one other thing to notice is that Paranoia is kind of awkward for my opponent to pick up, right? The one that's over here. Miles being the one that has picked up the objective last round, and when you look at it now, it probably feels like a pretty bad blunder over Lizard, right? Had they just been swapped, Miles could have done a web swing right away. Could have been pretty good. You know, inside is 2020, and that's where you see the importance of saving your power, right? Because Sabretooth also was in a slightly more awkward position because I wasted all of my power last round. And I had more power on Sabretooth, I could have done a primal bounce this round and really got a crazy, like a whole nother level of crazy than what we've seen him do already. Unfortunately, my opponent gets the 1 damage and the wild throw, so that means they get to place with a web swing. When you do it, be careful. You're supposed to place in the center of the tool. Like, it was easy for my opponent to just angle it differently and place there, so that's all fine. But in general, let's try to be careful about this, to play clean. But this warning is not a super clean game. I'm being extra sloppy with my Sabretooth decisions so far. Well, round 1 mostly, right? Round 2, I think I'm fine with what I did. Grabbing that disturbance makes sense for me, as it is still on the ground. And now that Miles has moved in and Miles is holding an extract, I can really double down on the value with Black Bolt. So as you can see, I'm having a really reactionary playstyle with this attrition game, where I'm really reacting to how my opponent exposes his model and try to get work done from there with my threat ranges. Black Bolt's gonna go into Miles. I've got 4 with Pierce, which is really good, but Miles can be a pretty tanky guy when the spider sense gets going and his leadership, right? So we're just gonna transfer power from Crystal to Black Bolt, get back to 2 power, which means that if Lizard strikes Black Bolt, I hopefully don't die miserably. I know this might sound unlikely, but MCP dices can be wild, and when you have a model with only 5 stamina, holding an objective, if you can do, I think it's worth doing everything you can to try to stay ulti. So we see our opponents taking the time to pre-measure everything. That's perfect, that's how you want to play. Well, not everything, but everything relevant, right? So Tail Whip coming into Black Bolt, we're gonna spend for some extra defense, right? I don't want to risk it. The longer I can stay at max out with Black Bolt, the more confident I am that he's gonna stay LT and get his activations to do damage. So we block infinite. Blocking 7 on 6 dices, because why not? So here we get a nice little freebie with Beast now, because we can again look at going into Miles. Why Miles and not Lizard? Lizard doesn't hold an objective, so we get a free shot into Miles. I already have 2 power, so no matter what, I will get to throw him off of the objective, get some collision damage, maybe throw him off of the outside of 2 is also an option. Start working on that Miles hit point, but it seems like Miles went from blocking 4 on 3 dices to blocking 0, because why not? So we just daze him. And now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a super sloppy game. I don't place myself within 1 with the forced place on Beast, because I'm terrible at this game sometimes. But no, jokes aside, it's just sometimes you forget a trigger. In this case, I forgot the wild. I think we were talking about something as everything happened, and then like it kind of like broke down the pacing. It's easy to then like forget something, but honestly, it would not change much. I would still be on the objective and be pretty happy with my life. So here, this forces some awkward decision for our opponent. He chooses to go for the extract. I can understand. Being at 0 extracts doesn't feel great, but exposing Gwen when you don't have prio is always risky. As Gwen is an amazing model for control, and she's really strong when she gets to go last and rearrange the board, but she doesn't have power to rearrange the board much. She also is likely not gonna be doing anything crazy here. I do try to get some rerolls off with Beast to take less damage, but Skulls means that I can't all that much. I do end up taking another damage on the Beast, which is unfortunate. He's starting to feel like Beast is not having a great time on defense, but you know what, he dealt 3 damage to Miles with a single shot, so great trade. So we're gonna be dying the center, but I've got 3 objectives. I've got 3 objectives and a back point for a total of 5 points. So even though I was behind on round 1, my better positioning, right? I always say that it's okay to sacrifice for a better position. And that's what happened on round 1. My opponent really wanted to maximize his scoring with the center and the side objectives, right? Make sure he would score the maximum amount of points possible. It did cost him a life on Miles. It did also cost him a fair bit of positioning for round 2, so that's why I am just building off of this, right? Like now if you look at round 3, which is going to be starting, I now have a victory point lead, which I don't expect to hold necessarily next round, right? Like I think right now I've got it, but I expect it to shift back at some point a little bit. But if we look at the upcoming round, I'm likely starting with this guy because Sabretooth's got 2 power. He's going to be at 3. That means I can look at her. Why her? She's got an objective, so dazing her is a pretty good move. And combine that with the fact that right, if you look at how everything has been positioned for me overall, sure, Crystal got thrown, but even before being thrown, she was like roughly where Black Bolt is. So I'm trying to keep my more fragile models more at the back, right? Like over here. While to play the scenario a bit, my opponent has abandoned his back point, right, entirely for this round, which honestly sometimes it's the right move to do. Don't ever feel like you have to have someone everywhere every round, but now this model and this model are super fragile and are both on the center. Black Cat is injured, so she could get KO'd a bit out of nowhere. Part of this defensive stack with right now there isn't much going on for my opponent on that aspect. Luke Cage is at 0 power, which means that if I choose to commit with Sabretooth into her, right, like if I want to do this, I've got he's got no taunt coming in, so that should make it fairly easy, right? This is those layers of powers from round to round, and if you start playing Inhumans, it's something you start thinking about a lot. Here we're gonna finish the cleanup. Alright, so as I was mentioning earlier, I'm gonna start with Sabretooth because I'm gonna get potentially some big damage into Gwen. Hopefully dazing her. Still gonna take a moment here, right, in game. You always want to take your time, even though this makes the most sense. Looking at the spender, I've already done 1 spender this game and felt like it was a terrible choice, so ideally I don't do it. In general with Sabretooth, if you can do builders, just do builders. You've got so many great superpowers to use that power on. So we've got 3, Gwen blocks 2. She can reroll skulls because of Miles' leadership. So we only get 1 in. So now I'm like thinking, what should I do? And that's a tricky one. So I end up going for the stop squealing and die. I am unsure if this is the right call or not, honestly. But it's 8 dices with Pierce into 3 dices with a reroll for sure. But I end up getting 4. And Gwen doesn't feel like taking damage, so, well, she takes some, but, you know, 1 damage. That's pretty bad because I was hoping for more than 1. Had I dealt 2, I could have followed up with a primal pounce or throw, but sadly I cannot in this case. But now my opponent has still that situation, right, where both Black Cat and Gwen need to activate as soon as possible, and Black Cat is injured, so I'm feeling this is why my opponent prioritized activating the injured model first. It's also a kind of easy steal on Beast. He gets to move back. Could have been interesting to see maybe all webbed up in there or something, but I have a feeling the goal was to keep power for Spider Tracker online so that she's safer if I try to go after her. Alright, so here I'm gonna keep at the plan of dazing Gwen. It might have not worked for Sabretooth, but Crystal's gonna have a go at it because she has a chance of dazing, so it feels like it makes sense to go with her first. She's also likely to daze Gwen and then have potentially some chances of doing damage in other models. So I end up just going for a second beam here, right? I'm looking at my options, but I don't really want to push her too fast. And I don't want to use the slow shot because if I daze her, I want the extra attack to go into Luke Cage, which is what's gonna happen. I roll a good amount of damage here. And that's the thing, right? 3 dice defense will once in a while block like crazy, but do it often enough, do it often enough, right? Attack them often enough, and with volume, you'll get there. That's the game plan. And if you look at what I'm doing this game, I'm really trying to just maximize my offensive output by doing as many attacks as I can. I'm trying to prioritize hitting the fragile models before the tankier ones. Sometimes though, you get free shots into tanky models and then you take it. So here Miles has some good potential plays, right? Got 5 power, so you could webline kick, all webbed up. Got also the power for a spender instead somewhere in there. Like there's a lot of stuff that could be good for my opponent. It just becomes a matter of what you want to prioritize. We're gonna see, right, you're supposed to place the place tree, but like that place 1 wasn't like not measuring anything, so relevant, so it didn't matter. But it was on B space, it was just an accident. So sometimes it's okay. No need to get too crazy, but as I mentioned earlier, it's not my best played game on my end, and neither was it for my opponent in terms of being clean. We all should aim to play cleaner than we are playing this game. You take your accidental extra crits, you know. Sometimes you just click fast, especially on TTS. Sometimes you think you've hit the bottom ones and then like an extra dice shows up. It's not the end of the world, so we just subtract the hit from his successes. That's still gonna be 4 hits coming in to my 1 block. I choose to reroll. The thinking here is twofold, right? Like we're gonna take a second to talk about this. It might look weird to choose to reroll, but there's 2 things that's going through my mind. If he dazes me, it's good for one thing. I have dazed 2 of his models before they activate, so if he dazes Beast, I will keep priority, which is great for the attrition plan. But if he doesn't daze Beast, and I survive, I can try to apply pressure to her. Let's use the Predator, right? Could use Beast to apply pressure to the back point. I am LT, she's injured, so that can cause a lot of issues. I've got some good victory points for now, so like, if I survive, I can start looking at winning my scenario. If I don't, then I'm in a great spot for attrition next round. And this scenario is still going to be pretty tight, so I'm fine with this. So here, we're going to be just looking, right? Beast is easily in the angle to get into the car, right? So ideally, you want to put the token down, the widget, but sometimes for the really short distances, doesn't matter much. Now that Beast is dazed, I know I will have priority because I am not trying to daze Lizard before he plays. That's not part of my game plan. I will try to KO Miles now. KOing Miles seems great, like really great, because Miles is now all up in my face. So he chooses to use his Dispender and go after Sabretooth. If you wonder why, it's pretty simple. If he goes after Black Bolt, I can just sacrifice into Crystal, and then not only does he not make me drop an objective, but he might just flip Crystal so that she's ready next round, not slowed, not stunned, so like ready to do work, and then I'm still fine with Black Bolt to do stuff this round. So in terms of scenario scoring, this makes way more sense. Right, so here, pretty simple plan. We're gonna go after Miles. If I can deal heavy damage into Miles, I can look at dazing him next round, right? That's what I'm thinking. If I'm a little bit lucky, I can maybe daze him this round. 2 7 dice attacks with Pierce and a reroll is a lot of damage, even for Miles. So I've got 4 successes to my opponent's 1 block, so 3 damage goes through. This is the magic number. I don't even need to use my leadership. I can just do another 7 dice shot. So here we get, again, 3 successes, 4 after the crit and the reroll, and Miles only blocks 1. So he goes down. This is massive. Now, as you can see, pretty softly from me too. Didn't place a range 2 on Miles. I just wanted to place it near Black Bolt to pick it up. Then I realized, oh, I'm really sloppy. I already have one. So then what do? I guess, so then it makes sense to just drop it right near Sabretooth for next round, but that was not the sloppiest execution. In terms of attrition though, game's going great. Game would be hard for me to ask for more than this. So he's trying to get within 2 of Black Bolt to throw him, right? And then at first it didn't look like it was going over B space from his angle, but it was. I saw it when he placed his widget. I just inform him before he tries to angle somewhere else, so he can be on the objective and get a throw into Black Bolt. So tail whip into Black Bolt. This time I'm boosting my defense again, right? Last time I took no damage at 6 versus 4. This time I'm gonna take 3 damage. So that's why you always boost, because if you don't, maybe I just daze here. And could have maybe, like, I could have dazed and it would have not been the end of the world, to be honest, but I'm also fine with not dazing. So Crystal's gonna try to dodge. She needs to block 2, blocks only 1, and dazes. This is rough, because now I'm only scoring. I went from scoring 5 points last round to scoring 1 this round. But I'm maintaining priority. I've KO'd a model. I have these 2 more. Black Cat now has an objective, but she's like really far on the back point. She doesn't really want to leave this spot. I'm feeling fairly confident that I'm gonna have a great round 4. Sabretooth's looking a little bit beat up, but outside of this, everything else looking kind of good for me. Alright, so if we look at the board now, my priority is KOing Ghost Spider. Why? She's the one that, first of all, she's got 6 power. A Gwen with 6 power can do a lot of stuff. The other thing that's relevant here to note is now Luke Cage, right? Last round I mentioned, right, and as we looked at it, Luke Cage could not taunt Sabretooth, but now he can, so that changes the dynamic on this side, right? Like everything that's going on over here. As for now, how should I do this? I have also happened to have Black Bolt, who's almost dazed, so it just makes sense to use him. It's also going to give me the chance to set up a Inhuman Royal family, which is going to let me almost guarantee daze Gwen, well, there's KO Gwen, sorry, not easy. So if I KO Gwen, it's pretty massive, because then my opponent's left with 3 models, 2 of them are injured, 1 of them is, right, if we look at this, right, this is like a little bit out of position, but Sabretooth has Primal Pound, so he can get back into the center more easily. If we look at our opponent's models, right, they're like here. In the center, Lizard's doing a great job. He's going to be an issue a little bit, but it's Lizard, so it's 4 dice's attack. So at some point, those end up doing less work, hopefully. But all in all, I'm feeling pretty confident right now. If I can get a window to apply pressure over here, I'd be pretty happy. But I'm going to be really fine with just taking out her. And maybe him, right? Like both injured models that are easily accessible, depending on how dice rolls and stuff happen, right? As for what could happen that's bad, I feel like not much. I've got exceptional healing and sacrifice. I should be able to keep my models able to activate, outside of maybe getting someone dazed with a throw. But if I activate Black Bolt first, that threat isn't really present from Lizard. So we get Black Bolt going into Gwen. I only rolled 2 on my initial roll, so I'm gonna do the Inhuman reroll first. Get a skull. That's rough. That's now the issue right now is I'm getting only 1 power back from that attack so far. And I need at least 2 for my leadership to get me to 3 for these 7 dice shots. So I choose to reroll with the family, even though it's only 2 dices. But I get there and I even get the wild, which is massive, to a second boosted shot. This one gets way more juice in, right, with 5 successes and a pierce. So down goes Gwen. This is huge. Black Bolt is pretending he's a big dumb cat, known as Malekith right now, and just destroying Gwen. So now, I'm gonna lie, it's starting to look really grim for Spectre, right? The dices need to really be nice with him, so it's for him to get a good window. He goes with Luke. Powerman punches Sabretooth. That punch, yeah, just call it a punch. There's no Powerman in there. one success, easily blocks, and now the odds of Sabretooth dazing are really low. And so now he's thinking of what to do. Picks up the objective, goes for the card throw into Sabretooth, right? So that's 3 damage incoming. I block 2, take only 1, so now Sabretooth has 2 life left and exceptional healing, so Luke Cage cannot daze him. There is another Power Man Punch coming in, but it's guaranteed not dazing me. If it forces exceptional healing out, then I know I'm prioritizing using Sabretooth. If not, then I'll have some thinking to do. It doesn't daze him, doesn't even deal 1 damage, so sad activation from Luke. Now here I've got another interesting decision, right? We're getting close to the end of the game. I just want to maximize my value. So I've got 2 options when you think about it. I could activate Beast or Sabretooth. The thing is, Lizard is threatening to daze Sabretooth, right? Because 2 attacks plus throwing this guy in here should daze him. Maybe just like needs at least 2 of these. So like I could go with Sabretooth, but the way I see it is Sabretooth has a lot of power, so he's going to be able to do his throw and all that. So I want to use that for to get a better board position by moving Lizard once Lizard has activated. So what I can do instead is that big IQ play I think that I've done, which is I go with Beast. Because Beast is not in range to sacrifice for Sabretooth, but if he is, right, I'm also looking at just going with Sabretooth on that back point, which is something I'd like to do at some point, potentially. So here we've got Lizard, right, I need to move. I've got only 3 things that can move him. Master Punch from Black Bolt, which is done, Sabretooth with his throw, or Beast. So I'm going to use the basic concept of just creating space. Because sometimes when you know you're not going to be necessarily dazing your model, like dazing Lizard is hard. We're not going to pretend otherwise. I don't feel great about trying that with Sabretooth. So I'm like, okay, what could I do? And the answer doesn't seem obvious at first, but going with Beast, if I can push Lizard with my Spender, I can then reposition near Sabretooth for a sacrifice play, potentially pick up the objective, right? So Beast goes, I throw this 5 dice attack into Luke Cage because he's injured. If I can deal some damage, it's great. I don't, but I roll a skull, so I get a power. This is perfect because this way I still have my leadership power available to do stuff, and then we go for the Spender into Lizard. So I'm gonna get that free move so that I can get near Sabretooth for the sacrifice. I'm also looking for Wild and ideally a skull. I get the Wild, I don't get a skull. Also for now only deal a damage. I feel I might as well use my token as I don't expect any attacks to come into Beast outside of a sacrifice, and I cannot reroll on sacrifice. We get the skull. The extra damage doesn't matter because of Lizard's damage reduction, but we get the important push, right? With the token, to reroll any number, it felt like I had really good odds of getting it. And now I get this clutch play where I can grab it, use the leadership to put a power onto Beast again, so now I have sacrifice ready. So now Sabretooth is pretty much immortal from Lizard, right? Because the worst that happens is Lizard throws Beast into Sabretooth. Deals enough damage to daze me. I use exceptional healing, and then when she tail whips me, I can just sacrifice it into Beast. So Beast's gonna be taking a fair bit of damage, but I get to keep Sabretooth healthy and able to do his activation, which feels like it's pretty massive for me. So no blocks from Sabretooth, exceptional healing comes in, takes a damage. Not the fun part, but I gotta do what you gotta do. And now see the tail whip. There's a few options for my opponent, but it makes sense to just force the sacrifice out at this point. This is what will happen. Sacrifice into Beast. This time the tail whip isn't going wild like last time, so it's a easy block by Beast. And now that Lizard is activated, I can go with Sabretooth and do what I mostly want, which is throw Lizard into Luke Cage. What's great about this is if you look at my opponent's power on Luke, he's at 0. So even though he has Brace for Impact, he cannot use it on Luke. He could use it on Lizard, which at that point, why not? It might be the last throw of the game. So no power here, so Lizard's gonna brace, save that damage point, as every point might count for that endgame. And then Luke blocks a lot, 2 plus damage reduction, right? So only takes 1 from the Lizard getting into his face. So now I've got some options with Sabertooth. I could go on the back point, but with only 2 life, it feels risky to go after Black Cat, even if it's Black Cat. Like I might just get dazed and then it might feel really dumb. So I choose to go after Luke. I don't deal any damage. No, I deal 1. I deal 1, sorry. And then I just choose to go to the center line because I wanna keep scoring points now. So that I can set up a win next round either by score or by like scenario, like by attrition. Like I've got a few options. I don't know how it's gonna play out, but like attacking a second time doesn't feel great. This way I heal myself a little bit instead of taking damage from the gammas again. I'm trying to give myself some options. So Black Cat ends up doing nothing. Here I've got some interesting options with Crystal. I'm looking at maybe doing the AoE, but Beast is still like fairly LT. So like if I wanted to survive next round, which could be really relevant, I feel like just going on the objective, grabbing Empower with the leadership. I take it off of Black Bolt because I assume Black Bolt's just gonna get dazed before it gets to activate next round. So we beam into Luke, no damage. Then we go into Lizard. Right, oh, oops, the reroll first. I'm gonna deal no damage, but we're looking for the wild for Incinerate. We get a power either way, and then we go into... So I could have maybe used my token there, but it didn't felt great. One thing to note about Luke Cage is he's still outside of 2. So I only need to deal 1 damage to him for him to get KO'd at the end of the round, no matter what. If I can KO him before, it means there's victory points for my opponent, but if I can just KO him, yeah, right, so that would be better, but if I can't, it's not the end of the world. We go with the token, we don't get there, we only deal 1, but 1 is good enough for the end of round KO. It does mean that the score is going to be much tighter than it looks like, because we both have 2 paranoias, we both only hold 1 secure, because I don't own that back point with Black Bolt, right? So we're both scoring 4. I am in a much better position overall, attrition-wise, but the score being 14-14 does mean that it could backfire pretty badly for me. So thinking about this, right, I realize I should have probably not even struck Cage. No, I kind of had to, but like, I feel like I poorly placed Sabertooth again, right? Just blundering Sabertooth a few times this game seems to be the story of it. Because now, if you look, round went mostly as I expected, right? I did not pressure the back point, right? Like, I know I mentioned earlier that I really wanted to pressure this point, and I didn't. So he's still holding it, scoring 2 points. It's been really good for my opponent, but I did manage to KO, right, Luke and Gwen that was over here, which was the other thing I was happy with going after. Now though, there's a chance. It's not big. We're not gonna pretend it's massive, but my opponent actually has a small chance of winning because of me probably being too passive about that back point. Like, right, I feel like, you know, the beast play was cool, but maybe with Sabertooth, I should have just went over there, right? I feel like that would have been better, because if he doesn't daze him, I just scored 2 more points and I win. And if he dazes him, then he's flipped, because right now, if, and it's a big if, but if my opponent can daze and or KO one of these, and then, well, he needs to throw Beast, right? Throw Beast into Black Bolt. Once he's dealt like 8 damage, like into one of them. And then if he can daze both of these and this guy, right? If he can like take them all out, if they can all get KO'd, well, dazed and or KO'd, right? If all of these don't activate, I lose. I probably lose, because then if, like, it depends, right? How much power, like, assuming Lizard can pick up the objective off of Beast, which he should be able to, right? Because if he throws him over here, then he can pick it up, like somewhere around here, with the range 2. If he can do that, he would be scoring 1, 2, 3 points, and Crystal would be able to score a maximum of 2, and I would be playing before Black Cat. So even if I go right over there, Black Cat can just go on my back point. The odds of this happening are really low, right? Like, I'm not sure what they are, but really, really low. We can just for sure say that they're really, really low. But if something crazy like this happens, my opponent still has a window to win. That's why you often want to try to play until the very end in MCP, because there's a lot that can happen during a game, and you're often, even though it's unlikely, you might still have a little window for victory, even at the end. Because of course, right, like Lizard is looking at like roughly a 30% chance of dazing Sabertooth, then a 22% chance maybe of dazing of also KOing Beast and like doing the whole thing. It's like we're talking abysmal chances, right? Because both of these things need to happen. So like it's probably like a under 5% chance, but I still made a few blunders, right? Like I've said, I've not been happy with some of my decisions with Sabertooth, and they almost cost me the game. Well, almost, right? Like I gave myself a chance of losing a game that was going overall really well due to a few bad decisions. Like, had I thought about this more, Sabertooth should have I should have probably just committed with Sabertooth right over here to daze Luke Cage before, and so that he doesn't score that 2 extra victory point, because I would still score with Crystal, would have been 14 to 12. And then I would not have that risk. So, you know, I moved over here because it felt safe at the time, but it almost cost me the game. So once in a while, you just gotta choose violence. As for the final score, Black Edge is gonna chill on our back point. We're gonna go for we're just speed running through it right at that point, because it's guaranteed that I win. Like there's no way Black Cat stops it. So it's just a matter of how I want to score. I could have denied my opponent a victory point, right? But it's kind of irrelevant. It just takes more time if I double move and throw Black Cat. And I score the same amount of points. It's just like for the sake of blocking one. So the game's gonna end 22-16. Real fun game. Specter is a great guy. I had a blast, even though we were both playing pretty poorly. You might have had the chance to catch the game on Discord, right? Because we were streaming it in the TTS channels. If you did, well, now you get to also get my inputs of it. If you didn't, well, still get to see how it went. So yeah, as I was expecting, right? Just managed to generate a little bit more momentum. I managed to keep the attrition game going. And even though Lizard did a lot of work with some clutch tail whips into Black Bolt to daze him and stuff. Well, not daze him, but daze Crystal, displace him, daze him this round. There's a limit to how much he can do with his 4th dice strikes, and the little damage piling up from all of my models managing to be better positioned, right? I've mostly been chilling in this general area the whole game, while sadly for my opponent, having no safe extract plays, it meant that he had some models stuck over here at the beginning. He then also had Luke stuck here for a little while, right? So I managed to displace him a little bit more, and get more offense going. Crystal was definitely my MVP this game, if you ask me, and hopefully I'm gonna get better at playing Sabertooth, because I'm not happy with how I played him overall. Like I think it wasn't, you know, terrible, but it wasn't great. But he's so strong. It's a really great model. If you haven't tried him out, try him out in any affiliation that plays extra stuff with extra power. It's insane. So that's gonna be it for this one. Thanks for watching, and have a great day or night.